G'day folks, Wren here, and it is time for my 2023 stats as well as some 2024 goals. So in 2023, I had a very intense year filled with lots of good and some very stressful times. I met Kirsty, which was the best. I also started building my house. Still not finished, but it's very nearly there.
Yes.
Also, my darling Chopper had 2 surgeries in 2023, which was rough. I also turned 30 in 2023, which was awesome. I went overseas for the first time. I went to New Zealand for my 30th birthday, and then I'm now in England. Yay! 2023 had a lot going on, and hopefully 2024 continues to be as great, but like less stress would be lovely. But despite all of that stress, I did manage to read a whole hell of a lot of books. So I ended up reading 287 books. Kirsty's just kind of dying on the side.
Double what I did.
So that calculates to 58,736 pages. I really can't believe I read as much as I did, although I was very much in my manga era in 2023. So a lot of those books were manga, and it's really good. That trend is going to continue in 2024 because I'm not leaving my manga era. So the shortest book I read in 2023 was Hush Little Baby by Ashley Michelle, which was 11 pages. I read this because Sasha mentioned it on a live show once or something. It was... Then the longest book I read in 2023 was The Stranger Beside Me by Anne Rule, which was 528 pages. This was an unfortunate read for me. I thought it would be like a 5-star. It ended up being more like a 3. I just wasn't as hooked with it as I wanted to be. So speaking of page numbers that I read, 83% of my reads in 2023 were under 300 pages. So most of that is manga, not gonna lie. Then 17% of my reading was between 300 pages and 499. And then I only read the one book that was over 500 pages. It doesn't even count as a percentage. It was 0%, but one book. So my average rating for the whole year was a 3.98 stars, which I feel like is the same every single year, but I ended up having 5 1-stars, 18 2-stars, 44 3-stars, 127 4-stars, and 90 5-stars.
Like 6 5-stars.
I read a lot of Black Butler.
Enough said.
Yeah. And then the highest rated book that I read was A Man and His Cat Volume 5 by Umi Sakurai, which has a 4.61 star rating. Makes sense. It's a good manga series. So then my top 5 genres that I read, no surprise that my number 1 genre was manga. I ended up reading 134 manga volumes in 2023. Keep in mind that I did that 30 and 30 challenge in September. I read most of Black Butler, I think I read all of actually Blood on the Tracks. I was going through as many series as I could of manga while also starting way too many. Then my next most read genre was weirdly fantasy, and this was 106 out of my total books read. I keep thinking that I don't read much fantasy, but then again, some of the manga was fantasy. But I think one of the things I do want to try and get back into in 2024 is reading more fantasy.
I can help.
The number 3 genre, I don't know if I'd call it a genre, but it's what came up on Storygraph, but that was queer books. Now, I read 91 queer books in 2023. It sounds like a lot, but considering the amount of books I read, 91 doesn't even make half, which I keep thinking is strange because like I think all I read is queer books. But then again, the manga came in and a lot of the manga I was reading wasn't queer. I did read a lot of queer manga and it was great, but a lot of the bigger series that I was reading was not queer. I don't know, I do feel a bit weird about it being the 3rd genre and not like number 1. I still read 91 queer books, so that's still amazing. Then the fourth genre that I read the most of was romance, with 67 romance books. Again, I feel like I wasn't reading much romance, but apparently I was. I don't know, but I did read some amazing romances in 2023. And then the fifth top genre that I read was horror, with 36 horror books, which was great. I was really feeling my horror books in 2023. I was trying to read some different types of horror, but I am definitely a horror person. I love it. It's so good. But yeah, horror to me is just, it's so fascinating and interesting and so entertaining. I love it. Then Storygraph did this thing of your most read authors, and I was like, oh, that's so interesting. And I looked at them and they were mostly mangaka. So let's just go through that. So the number one author that I read with 28 books, Yana Tavoso.
Yeah.
They are the mangaka of Black Butler, which, amazing, the best ever. Next up with 13 books is Shuzo Oshimi, the mangaka of Blood on the Tracks, which I did read all 13 volumes that were available to me in 2023. Then at 11 books was Kohi Horikoshi, who is the mangaka of
My Hero Academia!
Yeah. I only read 11 volumes. I really wanted to read more in 2023, but I had a couple months where I went off My Hero Academia, and I don't know why. Maybe it was because a certain character did a certain thing. We have little spats about. She's just cackling in the corner. It's great. Then with 10 books, the next author was Atsushi Okubo, who is the mangaka of Soul Eater. I had to read 10 volumes to complete the series, which I did do. Then with 8 books, the next author was Shigemitsu Harada, who is the mangaka of Cells at Work Code Black, which I read all of that series, which it was so good. Then with 5 books, we have Aruko, who is the mangaka of My Love Mix-Up, which I've been having such a fun time with, and massive thanks to Meredith for getting me on to that manga. It's been so cute. So the next one is also My Love Mix-Up, is Wataru Hanakure. Then at number 4, we have an author that is not a mangaka, which was, you know, very interesting considering the rest of this list. But with 4 books is Derek Landy, who is the author of the Skullduggery Pleasant series, which I have been very slowly reading in 2023. Then with 3 books is Huda Fami, who I only read those 3 books in December. I read 3 graphic novels by this author, and they were so much fun, and I want to buy them and reread them constantly because they were such a fun time. Very, very funny. So in 2023, I ended up reading 131 books by new authors. I always think that I'm just constantly reading from authors I've already read from before, but apparently not. So that was just a really fun little statistic that Storygraph gives out. But then 209 of my books of 2023 were part of a series, which that's huge. Again, most of those are manga, but I was trying to get through some series as well. And then I ended up having 10 rereads in 2023. So I ended up rereading Project Hail Mary twice. I read it for the first time in December of 2022. Then I reread it in July of 2023, and then again in November of 2023. It's an amazing book. I love it so much. I kind of always want to reread it, and it has kind of become a bit of a comfort read for me as well. Then in October, I ended up rereading both of the Darius the Great books, which is Darius the Great is Not Okay and Darius the Great Deserves Better by Adib Khorram. My favorite books of all time. I adore Darius the Great. It's so good. I love it. Again, another comfort read for me. In November, I ended up rereading The Boy from the Mish by Gary Lonesborough. This was a reread for the Australian Readathon hosted by Mel from A Book Fiend Named Mel. This was the group book for this round. I had been wanting to reread this book for a while because I originally read it in a single day, and that was like unheard of for me back in the day. And I kept thinking that, did I love it as much as I think I did? But I ended up rereading it and can confirm I loved it as much as I thought I did. In May, I reread Spellbound by Ali Theron. This was a book I had been meaning to reread for a while because I wanted to complete the series. It was just a trilogy, and I think I read the first one in 2019 maybe, and I never continued, and I definitely did not remember enough of the series to continue on. So I did reread that and actually finish the series, so like, way to go me. In August, I reread The Weight of It All by N.R. Walker. I reread this because Sasha was doing the Thick Thighs readathon in September, and she asked me about, you know, if the representation in The Weight of It All was good. And I was like, oh yeah, like, I think so, but it could be taken either way. Like, you know what, I'll reread it and I'll let you know. And then within 2 days, I reread it and figured out that for the type of readathon that she was going for, it was not a good recommendation, but I still love the book. It's a very fun time. In June, I reread The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang. I have been wanting to reread this for a while because I definitely considered it one of my favorite books of all time, but I ended up rereading it because I think Amy and I were talking about it on sprints a few times, and I was like, you know what, I should just reread it because I think they had some different ideas to it than I did. Ended up rereading it. Didn't love it as much as I did the first time, but still very good. Then in September, I reread Zenny by Rebecca Weatherspoon. This was the group book for the Thick Thighs readathon. We all had the same kind of consensus of book is good, narration is awful. So I think I really need to read this either physically or through an ebook instead of the audiobook, because with the audiobook, I give it like a 3-star. Then the last reread I had of 2023 was in July, was the remaking of Corbin Whale by Roan Parrish. This is, again, one of my all-time favorite books and a book that I reread constantly because it is, again, one of my comfort reads. I adore this book so much. It's amazing. Has some really good autism rep as well, I think, and is queer and lovely, and I have a good time. Now, before I get into quickly going over some 2024 goals, I'm going to quickly flip through my 2023 reading journal because I did have some goals in here. My first goal was to finish 15 series, and I did do this. Am I a little bit annoyed that like 10 of those are manga? Yes. Hopefully in 2024 I can read more novel series instead of manga series, but you know, a completed series is a completed series. Then I wanted to read 6 physical books every month, and I mostly achieved this except for 4 months out of the year when I only read 3 or 4 physical books. I definitely struggled with physical reading in 2023. I had a lot of health issues going on throughout the year that made physical reading absolutely impossible. I love audiobooks, but I do want to try and read some more physical books. Then I wanted to read 6 nonfiction. Don't know why it's 6. I sometimes really like the number 6, but I did end up completing this. I only read 6, I think. I don't think I read any more, but really proud of myself for reading 6. And all of that pride goes straight out the bin when my next goal was a bi-monthly book buying ban. Did I ever complete it? No, not a chance. We've established I have no willpower when it comes to books. Then my next goal was to keep up with my book review journal, which I didn't do. I think I got the first 6 months and then I tape it off. I was really enjoying it. I was doing these like really creative spreads and I was having such fun with it. But because I wanted to film it every month, that just became such a pressure for me that I couldn't just do little bits here and there. I had to do it all in one sitting, and that was just too much for me. So I stopped doing it completely, which is kind of sad because my mum made that journal for me so I could use it for that specific reason. But, you know, life happened. My next goal was to complete the Soul Eater manga, which I did do. I only needed to read 10 volumes, and I did that. And I had a lot of fun. The next goal was I wanted to read 6 books each month that I already owned. I kind of got like half of this. The rest of the months that I didn't get, it was like I only read like 4 books I owned or something like that. But that is definitely going to be something I'm gonna try and focus on in 2024. My next goal was I wanted to read 5 of the Stargate Atlantis books in 2023. and I read one. I'm kind of upset at myself that I didn't read more of those because I love them, they're so much fun. But again, these are books that I have to read physically. There is no audiobook or even ebook for some of them. That's kind of the reason why I didn't read many of them, but I really, really want to get back into them in 2024. And the last goal that I had in my journal was that I wanted to read 30 indie books, which I did end up doing, which was pretty awesome. Gonna say that getting a Kindle definitely helped with that. If anyone would be interested in me going through my 2023 journal now that it's completed, let me know and I'll do a bit of a flip through to see how I filled out all of my spreads.
Do it.
Okay, so I guess I'm doing that. But yeah, so you'll see more of that in that video that I now am gonna make. All right, now on to the 10 2024 goals that I have. So I do have a journal setup video for 2024 that I will link down below. I do have a page in that has a whole bunch of goals. They're not just reading or YouTube goals, they are life goals as well. But I thought I would do like a specific reading goal list as well. So the first goal for 2024 is a bit of an easy one, but also challenging enough that I'm like, okay. But that is to read 10 physical novels in 2024. That might seem really low for a lot of people, but like I say, I really struggle with reading physically, so I set the bar kind of low at 10, but if I could get more, that would be great. I would like to read 20% of my owned TBR, which I think equates to about 60 books. Then I would like to read 5 books that are over 500 pages. I only got to the one in 2023, and I do kind of miss some long books. I read a lot in 2022, and I just dropped the ball in 2023. I have a few in mind that I would like to read and that I have been meaning to read for years. Looking at you, Muse of Nightmares. Then I'd like to read 4 non-fictions. I'm lowering it in 2024 because 2024 is not the year for 6, which 2023 was for some reason. Then I would like to read 4 anthologies. I got really into anthologies in about 2019. It was kind of like my introduction into reading again. But then since then, I have not picked any up and I find them really difficult to read. Yet I own like 3 or 4 anthology collections, so I really would like to get to some of those. My next goal is to read all of the famous 5 books by Enid Blyton. This book series and just like world in general is like very special to my family. It's kind of been like a generational thing, you know, where we all kind of got like, I don't know, indoctrinated into it. But I've never read the books. I watched the TV show when I was a kid and I was like heavily invested in that. But I didn't end up reading any of the books because the books that I did have that were like my dad's, they were so fragile that I was like not allowed to touch them, which fair. But I did end up buying the entire box set a couple years ago and I just gotta read them. The next goal is to reach the legacy arc of the Stargate Atlantis series, which will be about 8 books before I reach that arc. So it's a lot of books, but the Legacy series is, I can't remember how many books there are, but there's a few books where it's like, this would have been the next season if the show didn't get cancelled. Then I would really like to read all of the books that I bought in New Zealand. So when I went to New Zealand in July, I made a point to buy at least 1 book from every place that we visited, and I definitely did that and more. A lot of them were more like poetry books or just really, really short books because I was, you know, having to put them all in a suitcase and take them back home. Then the next goal would be to read 10 series. So complete the series altogether. This is kind of a standard one that I have every year. The number changes from year to year, but I would really like it if most of that would be novel series and not just manga series. And then the last goal that I have for 2024 is to read all of my gifted books. So I have been so lucky to have such amazing friends that have gifted me books over the past year, and I'm awful for not having read them already. And I'm always waiting for the perfect moment to read them. I need to stop waiting for the perfect moment and just read them. So I would really like to be able to read them, and then I can say to my friends, look, I read it. thank you. But that is going to be it for the 2024 goals and for the 2023 statistics. Let me know down below what some of your 2024 goals are, if you have any. And thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.